Dobar dan, gospodine Alakov. Or Alachov.
Good morning.
And you are most welcome.
Hvala.
Thank you.
I am the presiding judge. My name is Ajus. My colleague to the right, my immediate right, is Judge Kwan. And then there's Judge Stoller, and to my left I have Judge Prost. This is the case against Popović and others. You've been summoned here to give evidence by the defense team for Colonel Beara, Yubisha Beara, and you are the very first witness. Before you start giving evidence, our rules require that you make a solemn declaration to the effect that the course of your testimony you will be speaking the truth and the whole truth. The text has just been handed to you now. Please read it out aloud, and that will be your solemn undertaking with us.
Svečano
I solemnly declare that I will speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I thank you, sir. Please make yourself comfortable.
Thank you. Hvala.
As I read it, it's Mr. Nikolic from the Beara defense team who will be examining you first. And then he will be followed on cross-examination by some others, presumably. Mr. Nikolic, if you could also introduce yourself to the witness, please.
Mr. President, the microphone doesn't seem to work. If we could have a little assistance.
You can try the other one.
This one doesn't work either, Mr. President. Oh, mine's on now.
Oh, hold on.
Switch it off, please, and let him switch his off. No, mine is off.
Thank you.
Hvala na pomoći.
Thank you for the assistance. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning to everyone in the courtroom. Mr. Alachov, I want to introduce myself. My name is Predrag Nikolic, attorney at law. The counsel's microphone is off again.
Time in order not to lose time. Would you mind exchanging places with him, Mr. Stojic?
Not at all, but my microphone doesn't work either.
Yours is not working either now.
Nothing.
And oh, none of them?
Mine.
Only mine. I mean, that I can understand. And I have no daughter to impress today, but will you try again? I don't know. I can't help you from here. I mean, mine seems to be working fine. But even my colleagues is not working, eh?
Mr. President, it seems that when the witness's microphone is on, it deactivates our microphones. At least that's what it seems to.
I don't know.
Rad.
Yeah.
The other one. I know, but okay. We're
Yeah, but it's on now. Can we work with one microphone with the witness? All right, then let's proceed.
Ok. Evo, izgleda da smo...
It seems we have dealt with the difficulty. I will introduce myself again. Predrag Nikolic, attorney at law from Ljubiša Beara defense team. Good morning. It seems that the microphone is working now and we can continue. Could you please introduce yourself for the record by saying your first and last name as well as the date of birth and place of birth? You don't need to stand up. Answer. My name is Spiridon Alachov. I was born in 1943 on the 20th of January. 1943. Question. Tell me briefly what your educational background is. Answer. I was born in Ohrid. I completed my elementary and secondary school in the field of economic affairs. After that, I enrolled at the military academy in Belgrade in 1962. I completed the Ground Forces Academy in 1965, after which I was sent to my first garrison, which was in Raška, between Kraljevo and Kosovska Mitrovica. I spent a year there at the position of the platoon commander within an infantry company, after which I was transferred because of the needs of the service to the officer platoon of the Guards Brigade in Belgrade, providing direct security for the then President Tito. I was there until 1970, when I was transferred to the Benkovac garrison. To clarify, that is between Knin and Zadar in Dalmatia. I was platoon, interpreter's correction, company commander until 1972, when I was transferred to the garrison of Lastovo on the island of Lastovo. My duty there was security organ at the naval barracks. I was there until 1976 in late August. From there, I was sent to Belgrade to attend the Command Staff Academy. After having completed that academy in 1976, I was transferred to the garrison of Split. I was the desk officer within the counterintelligence group of the Naval Military District. I remained at that post until 1983 or 4. I was then transferred to the security department of the command of the Naval District as the desk officer for security. I was there until August 1988, and due to the needs of service, I was sent to the garrison of Knin. I was the chief of the security organ of the 9th Corps, also known as the Knin Corps. I remained in that position until late August or mid-August 1990, whereupon I returned to Split to the establishment post of Assistant Chief of the Security Department of the Military and Naval District in charge of staff security affairs. I remained there until the end of my professional military career, which was by late June 2000. In the meantime, because of the well-known events in the former Yugoslavia, I left Split together with my command for Kumbor, and I retired from there. That was my career, briefly put. Question. Thank you. In your answer, you mentioned several locations of your service: Lastovo, Split, Knin, and Kumbor. Did all these locations fall in the area of the Naval Military District of Split? Answer: yes, all of those garrisons were under direct command of the Naval Military District, headquartered in Split. Question. Please pause before answering.
More or less, we are synchronized, the interpreter and myself, because you've been overlapping and you're creating difficulties. Mr. Alachov, try to allow a short pause after Mr. Nikolic has finished his question in the same language you speak, because the interpreters have still got to translate to us who don't understand your language. Mr. Nikolic, sorry for having interrupted you like this, but it was necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Alachov, to go back now to the period when you were on Lastovo, what was your position there? Answer. In the garrison of Lastovo, I was the security desk officer at the Naval Military Garrison Barracks there. It was the first post I had in the field of security.
Recite mi, kada ste I kojim
Question. Did you ever meet Mr. Beara, and if so, on what occasion? Answer. Yes. Immediately after my arrival in Lastovo, a few months after that, perhaps 2 or 3 months later, Mr. Ljubisha Beara, together with a team from the counterintelligence group, officially visited Lastovo, attending to some tasks assigned to him by his superiors. Upon his arrival in Lastovo, Mr. Ljubisha Beara introduced himself and explained that he was there to attend to some business that needed to be done in that territory. He introduced himself and then his colleagues. Question. Judging by your answer, you were at the time working for the security service. Was that closely related with the counterintelligence group? Answer. Yes, the spheres of activity overlap, as well as the competences of the counterintelligence group and our garrison. It had to do with the army units. My competence was the unit I worked in. I was in charge of its internal security. However, the jobs are almost identical and they overlap in many segments of activity.
Je li upravo to
Question. Was that overlap the reason why you met Mr. Ljubisha Beara? Answer, yes. It is customary when one goes to an area covered by a certain security organ that that person from the outside should introduce themselves. Mr. Ljubisha did so not only for official reasons, but he seemed to be very pleasant. He introduced himself and we spent time together during the period that he was there. It was only a few days, but we also saw each other outside working hours. Question, Mr. Alachov. And last of all, you were still a young man, relatively young for someone involved in security activities. What impression did you gain after having met these counterintelligence officers, in particular Mr. Ljubisha Beara? Answer. By that time, I had only begun working for the security service, and that contact meant a lot to me, particularly because on the island of Lastovo there were no other security organ members. And I don't know how familiar you are with that, but Lastovo is a remote island, and travel and communication via telephone was made difficult. I made the best use of that meeting, and Mr. Ljubisha was very open, and he was kind enough to explain to me some things that pertain to security, what one needs to do, focus on, and what methodology to use. Although it was not his task, he did so as an experienced member of the security organ. That situation contributed much to my knowledge in that first phase of my work. Question, as far as I can see, it was an incentive for your future work. Were you able to, later in the course of your work, contact and ask Mr. Ljubisha Beara's opinion on various things? Regardless of whether it was directly related to your work as the security officers, but maybe only because you had a question that had to do with your sphere of activity alone rather than his. Answer. When we met, we didn't only discuss official affairs. Ljubisha was very accessible, very open, and although it was a very brief period of time, our relationship resembled two people who have known each other for a while. Just before he departed, he invited me to drop by their office whenever I am in Split, to either have a cup of coffee together or a chat. And whenever I had time and traveled to Split, I did go to their offices in my free time, in my spare time, and contacted him. Question. From your answer, it seems that the next post you held was in Split. What was your duty there? Answer. Having completed the Command Staff Academy in 1978, I was transferred to the garrison of Split. My establishment post there was the desk officer of the counterintelligence group of the Naval Military District. In that period, the naval captain at the time, Beara, was no longer with the counterintelligence group. As far as I can recall, at first he was the desk officer of the security department of the command of the military naval district. Question. Did you continue your relationship not only in professional terms but only privately, but also privately? Answer: yes. Along professional lines, as the desk officer, he was supposed to supervise my work. We worked in the same sector, but it was then that we began spending time together privately, but it lasted for a short while only. As far as I can recall, Ljubiša Beara in early 1979 was transferred to the garrison of Kumbor to work for the security organ there.
Po povratku iz Kumbora,
Question. Or rather on his return from Kumbor, was he at any point your superior? Answer: yes. He was my immediate superior when he took up the post of chief of the security department of the counterintelligence group. However, he had a superior role also while he was deputy chief of the security department, while I still held the post I had in the counterintelligence group and as desk officer in the security department. Question. Mr. Alachov, your relations are now those of superior and subordinate. Can you describe to me the characteristics of Ljubiša Beara as a superior? How did he treat you and other subordinate officers? Answer.
Na poslovima
As a superior officer, I can say that he was very correct, always willing to help, always ready to guide, to provide guidance and to explain how things should be done. He asked that things be done well and in a timely manner. As I said, neither I nor my colleagues ever hesitated to consult him, to ask him for guidance, to ask him for advice or for instructions as to how best to do our tasks.
Recite mi, molim vas,
Question, tell me please, at that time in Split, what was the ethnic breakdown of the security organ you worked in? Answer, well,
mogu reći
I can tell you that it was heterogeneous. There were Slovenians, Muslims or Bosniaks, Croats, Macedonians. At that time, we didn't pay special attention to people's ethnic background. There was Hazibegović, who was a Muslim or Bosniak. There was Vjekoslav Runjev, who was a Croat. Miloje Karanović, who was either a Serb or a Macedonian. He was born in Skopje. And there were other persons. So there were people from all the parts of the former Yugoslavia, all the republics.
oprostite, sad kad govorimo o
Now that we're talking about the ethnic makeup, let me ask you about your ethnicity. Answer. I was born in Macedonia. So according to my place of birth, I'm a Macedonian. My parents were Macedonian. I grew up in Macedonia and lived there for a while.
Hvala.
Question. Thank you. I see that at one period you served in Knin. What post did you hold there and in what unit? Answer. I served in Knin from the end of August 1988 until August 1990. There, I was appointed head or chief of the security organ of the 9th Corps. At that time, the 9th Corps was being established and that command was being formed at the time.
Znači, vraćate se
Question. So in 1990, you returned to Split. Did you return to the same post? Answer, yes. Yes, I still had the same post and the same function. Question. Let's dwell a little on the end of 1990 and the beginning of 1991. What was the security and political situation like, bearing in mind that wartime tensions were already mounting in Croatia? Answer. From the end of 1989, and even before that, ethnic tensions began mounting. Various events upset people, and nationalism began to awake on both sides. The tensions escalated to such an extent that people began to build barricades made of logs. And as the Knin area has a mixed population, there are villages with Serb populations and villages with Croat populations. People built barricades to protect themselves from one another. People organized themselves because they wanted to avoid being taken by surprise. Relations deteriorated to such an extent that this later became an armed conflict. Question. Let's dwell a little on the city of Split. You yourself said that ethnic tensions grew. Your service had a heterogeneous ethnic makeup. So to what extent did all this affect the work of the service? How was it reflected in the work of the service? Answer. Generally speaking, among the members of the security organ, relations were quite stable. We didn't feel the influence of these events to a large extent. Some persons would, as a joke rather than anything else, start putting forward their ethnic affiliation, not maliciously. Before that, we hadn't paid attention to other people's ethnic background, but now we started taking an interest in who was from where and what their ethnic affiliation was. It was then that I learned that Ljubiša Beara was a Serb and not a Croat. All the time I had thought he was a Croat because he used the Croatian dialect with a Dalmatian accent, or rather the Croatian language, and he used the Dalmatian dialect. But he continued to speak in the same way as before. Not just he, but others also. I can say that Ljubiša Beara and the others tried very hard to retain the unity of the service. I can tell you about an incident that happened. A colleague of ours who worked in the archives, question just a little bit, we're straying from our topic, so excuse me for interrupting. We spoke about the mounting tensions in Split. What were the causes of this mounting tension, and what was the position of the JNA organ and the military naval district? If you are referring to the position of members of the army on the territory of the naval military district and the overall situation, we were subject to all sorts of pressure. Certain officers they started following us, or rather the members of the ZNG started following us around, threatening our families, denying the commands of the units supplies which were absolutely necessary, such as food, power, water. Telephone lines were cut off. And this was mainly in 1990 and onwards. they harassed our families, especially those of members of the security organs and the commanding officers of the military naval district and its command. Question. At that time, was Ljubisha Beara your superior officer? Answer, yes, he was. It was precisely then that he was chief of the security department and I was assistant chief of the security organ for staff security affairs, and I was directly subordinate to Captain Ljubisha Beara.
Obzirom na sve ovo što ste iznijeli,
Question. Bearing in mind everything you've said, the provocations and so on, I'm interested in Ljubisha Beara's response as a superior officer who had certain responsibility for organizing the service under these circumstances. Please give me some examples as to how and in what direction he made attempts to deal with this situation within his service. Answer. Well, both before this period and especially during this period, he insisted that all tasks be carried out in a highly professional manner, in the spirit of the rules and regulations governing the work of the security organ and the armed forces of the SFRY. He did not permit any deviation from this or any improvisation. He especially insisted that we guard ourselves and our units from any unwanted consequences, either with respect to other persons, especially civilians, or anybody else.
kakve je on
Question. What measures did he order to be taken in relation to these provocations, such as cutting off electrical power, water, and other utilities, which all, you will admit, caused nervousness among you?
Organi bezbednosti,
Answer. The organs of command took measures through the official authorities as far as was possible at the time and as far as this functioned at the time to avoid such things happening. From time to time, these things were dealt with and they would stop, but then they would happen again. Ljubisha Beara, through representatives of the Ministry of the Interior in Split and other institutions, made efforts to have these situations resolved peacefully without the use of force or any other undesirable measures. And force was not used until the breakout of the armed conflict. Question. Did this situation cause the awakening of nationalism among individuals within the command? Answer. As for extreme situations regarding the awakening of nationalism in the security organ, this did not happen, but people did begin to leave the service, for example, And they were allowed to do this without any obstruction. They did this quite legally. Among the first to leave was then Captain Cherenko Stoyan. He was the first to legally leave the security organ and take up another post. And later on, he left the Navy. He left the JNA altogether. Among the others, I wouldn't say they were hostile, but there is an event that sticks in my mind, which occurred in the office of Flag Officer Petrović, Color Sergeant Dragan Petrović, who was then taking care of the archives within the security organ. He was in charge of the archives, and I was there when Ljubiša Beara entered his office, and Color Sergeant Petrović took from his desk a šajkača. This is an old-fashioned Serbian cap with a Chetnik symbol. He put it on his head, and he said, "Ljubo, look at this." He was a non-commissioned officer, but yet he addressed him as Ljubo by his first name, because that shows how close we are. We were on first name terms, all of us. So when Ljubiša Beara, who was the captain of a warship, saw this, he told him to take that cap off his head. He said that such things could not be kept on the premises of the armed forces. They couldn't be brought to the office. He told him to pack it up and take it back where it came from. And he criticized him for bringing such things onto our premises.
Mislim da nema potrebe da kažem da ta šajkača.
I apologize to the interpreters, but I don't think there is any need for me to stress that the šajkača cap is not a nationalistic symbol per se. It's a regular traditional cap worn even nowadays in Serbia, however, without the symbol.
Gospodine Alačov.
Question, Mr. Alachov. I'm interested in this situation and the reaction of such an officer as Mr. Ljubiša Beara in the situation where certain people were leaving the service on the one hand. On the other hand, the barracks were being blockaded. There were tensions, electricity and water supply were cut off. How did he try to deal with those things, and what instructions did he give you? Answer. Whoever expressed their wish to leave the security organ or the armed forces of the SFRY, that was approved without any pressure or obstacles. Some people expressed their wish for the pressures they felt to move to other services of the armed forces, whereas some others stated that they wanted to leave the armed forces altogether. Whoever expressed such a wish, their request was met, and the naval captain Beara stood by the principle that the work is prescribed by the rules of service of the security organ that such work is voluntary and that whenever somebody wants to leave, may do so. However, that person is still under the obligation to keep state and other secrets. Question, Mr. Alachev. All of us who hail from the region know of an event that took place in Split that was carried by the media. It is usually referred to as the Split Strangler incident. Can you tell us what happened and how did the security service deal with it? Who headed the security's activities pertaining to that, and how was it all concluded? Answer. The propaganda that was in place at the time, generally speaking, and across all spheres of politics, blurred everyone's vision. Some people believed all of the information that was served by various media. It culminated in early May 1992. They said it was spontaneous, however, I believe otherwise. In any case, there was a gathering in front of the Naval Military District Command building, and it was blocked. The truth of the matter was that people were sent from their companies to go and come in front of the building and demonstrate against what they termed the Serbian army, although at the time we were still the Yugoslav army. Question. Why was that incident characteristic? Why was it called the Split Strangler? It is a well-known incident because certain extremist groups among the mass of people there try to create chaos. It was clear that they were seeking to provoke the use of force. The incident is well known because the first soldier of the JNA was killed by the name of Geshovsky from Macedonia. He was a sentry and did nothing to cause fire being opened at him. It is also known for certain extremist groups which acted violently against the security forces. A group of them mounted an armored vehicle, an armored personnel carrier that was there to provide security for the command. There was a very strong young man who grabbed a soldier whose head was protruding through an opening of the armored carrier, trying to pull him out of the vehicle by the neck. We were instructed strictly to avoid any use of force. We could have used ammunition and explosives, but there were masses of people there, And had something like that happened, there would have been many more innocent victims, except for the strangler. He was called the strangler because he grabbed the soldier by the throat, trying to pull him out, and nearly killed him.
Kažete da je bila zabranjena upotreba.
Question. You said that you were instructed not to use mines and weapons. Who issued that order? Answer. The command. I know that the naval captain had a role in that. He himself suggested that force be not used, and when assigning tasks, he would regularly instruct us that we should resort to arms only if strictly necessary, as the last resort in trying to save our lives. He suggested to the command that an order be issued prohibiting the use of weapons. Question. We can see that there was a lot of provocation, that a soldier was hurt. Did the security service try to identify the perpetrators? Answer. Just another thing concerning the event before I answer. When the command of the Naval Military District was blocked by the citizens, some extremist groups also blocked the movement of a column of armored personnel carriers which were on their way to the Naval Military District Command to provide additional security. That part of the unit was stopped along the road by an extremist group. A crew was kicked out of an armored vehicle, and it was taken away, the vehicle, that is. By constant talks and negotiations over the phone with MUP representatives, the naval captain Beara managed to have the armored carriers brought back and secured by our personnel. Later on, they were indeed returned to the unit they had been taken from. Therefore, there was no use of force or weapons, and it was done in that way. Sorry, your question was? Question. Let's take it slowly. Answer this first, please. How do you know that it was Ljubisha Beara himself that contacted and talked on the phone with the MUP representatives? Answer. Since it was practically a state of emergency, we were constantly in our offices at in the state of ready, and I was in the office at the moment when he spoke on the phone. I was with the naval captain Beara. There were several such conversations that took place to deal with other cases as well, but this was the one I was referring to. Question. To go back to one of my previous questions, I don't think you've answered that. Did the security service take any measures in order to capture the perpetrators? Answer, yes. Since There was a lot of damage and a human life was lost. And among other things, it also constituted an attack on a legally formed armed forces in Croatia. We tried contacting the MUP without much hope, though, but the security administration insisted that we take measures to identify the main players, in particular the killer of the soldier and the strangler's identity, as well as the identity of the remaining 3 persons. I cannot recall their names off the cuff. A lot of time has passed. We were assigned the task from the security administration as well as their assistance in dealing with that issue. With that goal in mind, the then chief of the security administration, General Aca Vasiljevic, arrived at the naval district. He issued instructions and helped us to deal with the situation. In a short span of time, we managed to identify those people and to apprehend them and detain them in the military prison. Later on, they were interrogated and taken over by the court. I know that finally they were exchanged. Excuse me. We did not manage to apprehend the person who opened fire, killing the soldier. But according to our information, that person enjoyed the protection of the organs of the MUP of Croatia. Question. Mr. Alachov, didn't Mr. Ljubiša Beara take part in that operation, and if so, what was his role? Answer, yes. As head of the security department, he was the person in charge of the operation. We drew up a plan of action. We assigned people and went through a process of preparation with them. He also managed the operation until its completion. It was done, I should say, without any use of weapons or any beatings or anything of the sort. Question. Obviously, the operation and the incident was at the peak of the tensions. In your sector, that is the security organ, what was the ethnic makeup at the time? Was it still mixed? Answer, yes. A few people had left by the time, such as Chernko that I mentioned, and later on Zoran Radic left as well. There were a few others who left, but in total there weren't many of them, and the makeup was still heterogeneous. And it remained so even up until the time that we were relocated to Kumbor. I may be more specific if needed. Question, take it slowly, please. In the course of your answer, you managed that Ljubisha had a particular accent and that you thought him to be Croatian for that. However, now you know that he's a Serb, and at the time of that operation, you knew that as well. In the course of such tensions, did he ever act inappropriately, or did he present himself as a nationalist?
Ja nisam.
Answer: I never noticed anything of the sort. He continued behaving and speaking in the same fashion. At no moment did I see that he had any bias, that he held anything against people of other ethnicities.
Spomenuli ste malo
Question: a moment ago you said that the Naval Military District Command was relocated to Kumbor. Why did it take place and when?
Po obzirom da je
Answer: after the May events, and contrary to the promises made by the authorities that the tension would be reduced and problems resolved, the situation grew even more complex. Our electricity was being cut off, as well as the water supply, food supply, and we were no longer able to use regular communication routes and modes of transport. There were other things as well. There was a danger of us being completely cut off, so that we would be forced to surrender the command facilities. That is why, in the course of August, a decision was made that was supposed to provide for the continuity of command. And for that reason, a part of the command was supposed to be relocated to a forward command post, as we would say in the armed forces. That was supposed to take place on the island of Vis. The commander left for the island with some other members of the command. It was also foreseen that the shifts would take up to a week. However, around the 9th or 10th of September, we were indeed cut off completely and blocked, and those people who were on the island of Vis at the time remained there. I was one of those. We remained there until the moment that the entire command and units were taken outside Croatia. It was all preceded by a long-lasting process of negotiation under the auspices of many international organizations, which by that time had arrived in the territory. We negotiated with the authorities to provide for a safe pullout of the forces, their family members, and equipment from the territory of Croatia. It was towards the end of 1991, December 1991, although I cannot recall the exact date. It was then that the last unit pulled out of Split.
Sad ćemo, gospodine Alačov.
Question. Mr. Alachev will move on to another topic now. At the time you were serving in Split and in Knin, but let's talk about Split first. Was General Tolimir serving in Split? Answer, yes. At the time he was a captain. Before that, he had served in Veles in Macedonia. And he and another captain, Šteta, were transferred to fill vacant establishment posts in Split. I can't recall the exact years they arrived, but it was sometime around 1983. It may have been a year before or a year later. I'm not sure, but both Tolimir and Captain Šteta were appointed to the establishment post of desk officers in the counterintelligence group of Split. That was the first time I encountered Tolimir when he arrived there. Question. At that time, what duty was Beara performing when Tolimir arrived in Split? Answer. I think it was at that time that he had returned from the Kumbor garrison, and as far as I can recall, he was appointed assistant chief of the counterintelligence service of the Split Naval Military District, or rather chief of the security department. Question. At that time, was Beara superior to Tolimir? Answer, no. He was not his direct superior officer. The chief of the counterintelligence group was his immediate superior, and he was subordinate to the chief of the counterintelligence group. But there were contacts and exchange of information and experience, provision of instructions, but only as regards professional matters, the technical aspects of the job.
Dakle, u to vrijeme i vi ste...
Question. So at that time, you were there. So can you tell us what the relationship was between Beara and Tolimir? Were they merely acquainted as officers? And what was their professional relationship? Answer. Well, if you want to talk about their personal relationship, I just mentioned that Ljubisha was a very open, accessible, friendly person. As we had spent a long time there and socialized for a long time, I knew that, but as far as I know, he didn't socialize with Tolimir especially. Their contacts were purely professional, as far as I know. They didn't visit each other's homes, to the best of my knowledge. And at that time, there was already a circle of friends who knew each other from before, whom he socialized with. So, as far as I know, they didn't have any private social contacts.
Recite mi, molim vas,
Question. As you were in Split until the dislocation of the military naval district, at that time, was Tolimir in Split the whole time? Answer. Tolimir was in Split and held the same establishment post until August 1990. 90, except for the period when he went for further training. In August 1990, he came to the Kumbor garrison to replace me at my establishment post, and I returned to Split. Question. You said that he came to your place in Kumbor? Answer. To your post in... Answer. No, in Knin, sorry.
U Kninu je došao na formacijskom mjestu.
It was in Knin that he took up the establishment post of chief of the security organ of the command of the 9th Corps. And he replaced me at that post. I do apologize if I said Kumbor. I meant Knin.
A vi ste do tada bili u Kninu?
Question. And you had been in Knin up to that point? Answer, yes. From 88 until August 1990.
Ko je tada bio komandant tog 9. korpusa?
Who at the time was the commander of the 9th Corps, known as the Knin Corps? Answer. The commander of the 9th Corps was General Trajčevski, Tomislav Trajčevski, who arrived from the command of the then Third Army in Skopje. Question. The 9th Corps, or the Knin Corps as it was called, was it part of the military naval district of Split? Answer, yes. The 9th Corps was directly subordinate to the command of the military naval district in that period. Question. I see that you mentioned in that period. Was there another period when it was not part of the military naval district? Answer. When the armed conflict started. And towards the end of 1991, the 9th Corps was subordinate to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the SFRY along one chain of command. It was in the rear of the command of the military naval district, and in operative terms, part of it was under the command of the General Staff. Question. Mr. Alachov, please tell me, in that period, at any point, was General Mladic the commander of this corps? Answer. While I was serving in Knin, Mladic did not hold any position in the 9th Corps. When I left in August 1990, and when Tolimir arrived, General Spiro Niković was appointed commander. But he didn't stay there long, perhaps a year. I didn't see Mladic, but I heard that he came to Knin. But this was certainly after June 1991. Question. Although you assume that General Mladic arrived and took up the post of Corps Commander only in June 1991, the military naval district and you as officers and the security organs and Ljubisha Beara as the chief of that organ remained in Split for a certain time. Because you said that in late 1991 you were dislocated. Do you know whether in that period Mr. Beara and General Mladic had either private or official contacts? Answer, let me tell you that for a while Mladic was chief of staff, and after Nikovic left, he took up the duty of commander. And let me also tell you that in view of the situation, at the time, it was very difficult to move around and communicate. And there was very little time, or rather no time, for any personal contacts and for socializing. I have no information or knowledge that Beara ever socialized with Mladic. It's possible that there were brief professional, official contacts when they both went to briefings at our command while it was still possible, or in the course of brief visits by the security organ, Beara to Knin. But this may have amounted to 2 or 3 visits in that period, to the best of my recollection. Question. Answering my questions, you said that General Tolimir moved from Split to Knin in 1990, if I remember correctly. Please tell me, to the best of your knowledge, did he go back to Split or did he remain in the Knin Corps? Answer. After the dislocation of the units of the military naval district from the territory of Croatia, the 9th Corps remained for a while on the territory it was responsible for, so that Tolimir also remained with that unit. But I don't know until when, because after we left I lost contact with him. Question. So the military naval district had a new headquarters, a new area. Can you tell us where this was? Answer. That was the Kumbor garrison in the Montenegrin coastal area. Herceg Novi was the first nearest larger town. Question. Before you, there were huge tasks. You had to find headquarters for the command. Who coordinated this work on behalf of your service? And did you have any cooperation with the civilian authorities? Answer. If you're referring to Montenegro, on the territory of Montenegro, yes. We did have direct cooperation, and certain civilian facilities were given over to our use for the accommodation of our units and commands. Question. Colonel Beara was in the administration in Kumbor at the time. Did he organize the work of the service? Answer. Yes. Persons, or rather members of security organs from all the units were there in a small area. We were overstaffed. And in view of the new needs and circumstances, a new establishment structure had to be put in place and appointments made, or rather the establishment posts had to be filled. And administratively, the status of all these persons had to be dealt with. And Captain Beara was in charge of all this. He proposed certain solutions to the command of what was by then the Navy. Question. From your testimony today, it follows that you spent quite a long period of time either serving with or close to Beara from the beginnings of your work in Lastovo until Kumbor, where you were from or rather, this is the period from 1973 to 1991. And when did you part ways, you and Colonel Beara, finally? Answer, well, we never did, but we did say farewell in July 1992 when he left to take up another establishment post. I think it was for a while in the security administration, and then I don't know, he went to the army of Republika Srpska. Question. Well, this was a long time ago, 1992, but I see that you knew each other well, that you were friends, as you say. Can you describe Ljubiša Beara to me as he was in 1992 when you saw him for the last time? What is the image that sticks in your mind? What did he look like physically? Answer. Well, I'll take the liberty of saying that as for 3 or 4 months, we had been separated. He was in Split and I was on Vis. Our first encounter was in Kumbor after August 1991, and our next meeting was in late January 1992. He looked as he usually did, but was a little thinner. He is a tall man. If I have to describe him physically, he had sideburns, he wore glasses. He looked after his appearance. He was neat and tidy, always clean-shaven, always appropriately dressed. His clothes were always clean and ironed. I especially remember his shoes because they were always very shiny, as if they were patent leather shoes. That's how shiny they were. Question. Very well, Mr. Alachov. Evidently, Ljubiša Beara is a man you remember as a good man. Were you ever in a situation, including these dramatic times in Split, ever to observe or sense or feel that Ljubiša Beara took up a nationalist stance in relation to anybody, not just professionally, but in your private socializing? Answer. In relation to me, there was never a gesture, never a statement where he ever expressed any sort of nationalist sentiment. He never offended me in any way, and I never observed him acting in that way towards anybody else either. On the contrary, in that very sensitive situation, he never paid attention to people's ethnic background, to people's religious affiliation. But when appointing people to establishment posts, all he cared about was people's qualifications and the quality of their work. In those critical years when nationalism was burgeoning and when negative tensions were mounting, he appointed Major Tole Žarko as battalion commander, for example. I also know that in that critical period, he helped, while I was in Knin, my subordinate, Captain Petar Jukic, to be transferred from Knin to Split and to be appointed, and he was a Croat by ethnicity, and he was appointed to the establishment post of security organ in the protection regiment. This protection regiment was a very important unit. After the dislocation to Kumbor, the then Lieutenant Commander Ramiz Dugalic, who was a Muslim, was appointed deputy chief of the counterintelligence group. So there are other examples to demonstrate that he did not have any prejudices against people of different ethnic affiliations. Although I'm a Macedonian, I remained at the establishment post I had held before, and this was a leading position in the security organ.
Hvala, gospodine.
Thank you, Mr. Alachev, for your exhaustive replies. Your Honors, I have completed my examination in chief.
That's why I didn't interrupt you before as we were approaching the break time, because I noticed that you were approaching the end. I thank you, Mr. Nikolic, and I thank you, Mr. Colonel Alachev. We'll have a short break now of 25 minutes, and then we will start with the cross-examinations. Thank you.
All rise.